Preposterous. Simply preposterous. The words echoed through the grand hall of the Galactic Union Science Academy. Professor Trell's blue scales shimmered under the bright lights as he clutched his data pad tightly. The room full of the galaxy's finest scientific minds buzzed with dismissive murmurs. At the center of the chamber, Union Science Director Morrow adjusted his ceremonial robes and cleared his throat. Professor Trell, while we respect your decades of research, these claims are extraordinary. Deathworlds have long been considered nothing more than spacer tales to frighten young hatchlings. Trell stepped forward, his determination unwavering. With respect, Director, the data speaks for itself. He tapped his pad, projecting a holographic model of a blue-green planet. Our long-range sensors detected this world in the outer spiral arm. The readings are unlike anything in our records. The hologram rotated slowly, displaying atmospheric compositions and gravitational measurements. Numbers flashed across the display. Temperatures ranging from freezing to scorching within single rotations, atmospheric pressure that would crush most known life forms, and radiation levels that should prevent complex organisms from developing. Impossible, muttered Dr. Lin from the front row. No intelligent species could evolve in such conditions. That is precisely what makes this discovery so remarkable, Trell countered. Our preliminary scans detected artificial signals. There is intelligent life there, thriving in conditions we've always deemed unsurvivable. Director Morrow stroked his facial tendrils thoughtfully. Even if your readings are accurate, Professor, it contradicts centuries of established xenobiology. The unified theory of sentient evolution clearly states that intelligent life requires stable conditions. The crowd nodded in agreement. It was common knowledge throughout the Union that sentient species emerged only on worlds with moderate gravity, stable climate patterns, and protective atmospheres. The concept of Deathworlds, planets so hostile that merely setting foot on them meant certain death, had been relegated to fiction and folklore. Theories change when new evidence appears, Trell said quietly. I'm not asking you to overturn established science on my word alone. I'm requesting an expedition. Let us observe this world directly. A tense silence filled the chamber. Such expeditions were costly and rarely approved without overwhelming evidence. After what seemed like an eternity, a voice spoke from the back of the hall. I support Professor Trell's proposal. Heads turned to see Admiral Vorn, commander of the Union Exploration Fleet. The tall, gray-skinned official walked forward, his medals glinting. The Seeker is prepared for a deep space mission. If Professor Trell's findings prove correct, it would revolutionize our understanding of the universe. If incorrect, he shrugged, we've wasted some fuel and time. Director Morrow looked displeased, but recognized the political reality. Admiral Vorn's support carried weight. Very well. A small expedition is authorized. But he pointed a slender finger at Trell. When this turns out to be nothing more than sensor malfunctions or natural phenomena, I expect a full public retraction of these Deathworld theories. Trell bowed respectfully, hiding his smile. Of course, Director. 3 cycles later, the sleek exploration vessel Seeker prepared for departure. Captain Voss reviewed the mission parameters with her crew while Professor Trell supervised the loading of specialized observation equipment. Do you really believe we'll find intelligent life on this death trap? Asked Lieutenant Nix, the ship's sensor specialist. Trell gazed through the viewport at the stars beyond. I believe we're about to challenge everything we think we know about life in this galaxy. And that, Lieutenant, is why we explore. As the Seeker's engines hummed to life, none aboard could imagine just how profound their discovery would be, or how a species called humans would forever change the Galactic Union's understanding of what it means to survive. The Seeker dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a gentle shudder. On the bridge, Captain Voss leaned forward in her command chair, all 4 eyes fixed on the main view screen. Displaying target planet, announced Lieutenant Nix, his fingers dancing across the sensor console. The image that appeared left the bridge crew speechless. A blue-green marble hung in the void, swirling with white clouds and glittering with vast oceans. It looked deceptively peaceful from a distance. "Begin full spectrum analysis," ordered Captain Voss. "I want to know everything about this world before we get any closer." Professor Trell hunched over the science station, his scales rippling with excitement as data poured in. "Captain, these readings, they're even more extreme than our long-range scan suggested." The bridge crew gathered around as the professor displayed his findings. The planet's gravity registered at 1.3 times Union standard, enough to cause bone fractures in many member species. Its atmosphere contained corrosive oxygen at levels toxic to most spacefaring races. Temperature variations ranged from -50 to +50 degrees in different regions simultaneously. "No sentient species could evolve in these conditions," muttered Security Chief Krav, his armored plates clicking nervously. "It defies all evolutionary logic." And yet, Trell pointed to another reading. "We're detecting artificial signals, thousands of them, bouncing around the planet and into space, primitive by our standards, but undeniably technological." Captain Voss rubbed her chin thoughtfully. Could it be automated equipment left by visitors from a more hospitable world? "Unlikely," Trell replied. "The signals originate from all over the planet's surface. Someone, or something, is living down there." The captain made her decision. "Prepare the scout ship. We'll maintain orbit at a safe distance while a small team conducts closer observation." Hours later, the sleek scout vessel Whisper entered the planet's upper atmosphere, its stealth systems activated to avoid detection. Inside, Science Officer Kell adjusted the view magnification as they passed over a landmass dotted with structured settlements. "Look there," she gasped. The view screen zoomed in on bipedal creatures moving about on the surface. They walked upright, wore artificial coverings, and appeared to be building structures. "They're so fragile-looking," observed Pilot Dren. "Those thin limbs, no protective shells or scales. How do they survive here?" As the Whisper continued its silent journey, the team watched in growing amazement. The beings, humans, according to intercepted communications, were everywhere on the planet. They built homes in frozen wastelands and scorching deserts. They swam in waters that would dissolve Union species' protective membranes. They breathed the toxic air as if it were life-giving. "This defies everything we know," whispered Kell as they observed a group of humans engaged in what appeared to be recreational activity, intentionally sliding down a snow-covered mountain at dangerous speeds. "They're not just surviving here," Trell said in awe. "They're thriving. They're playing in conditions that would kill any of us within minutes." The scout ship circled the planet for a full rotation, collecting terabytes of observational data. They watched humans build, fight, create, and explore. The creatures seemed almost oblivious to the deadly nature of their homeworld. As the Whisper prepared to return to the Seeker, a violent storm erupted below them. The team watched in horror as powerful electrical discharges struck the ground near a human settlement. Instead of fleeing in terror, humans emerged from their dwellings carrying devices to record the deadly phenomenon. Dren struggled to find words. "They're documenting the danger, as if it's beautiful to them." Captain Voss's voice came through the communication system. "Return to the ship immediately. We need to report this to Union Command." As the scout ship ascended, Professor Trell couldn't tear his eyes from the view screen. "We've done it," he murmured. "We've found a true Deathworld. And its children are unlike anything we could have imagined." "That's completely impossible." Science Officer Kell rewound the recording for the 5th time. The observation post, hidden within a dense forest on the outskirts of a human settlement, had captured footage that defied explanation. The video showed a human male falling from a considerable height while attempting to repair a structure. He landed hard on the ground, let out what the translation software identified as colorful expletives, then simply stood up and continued working. Any Union species would have shattered bones from that fall, Kell muttered, making more notes in her data log. "These humans just walk it off." The Seeker had remained in orbit for 3 weeks now, with rotating teams of researchers manning the camouflaged observation post. Each day brought new examples of human resilience that shocked the alien scientists. Professor Trell entered the monitoring station, carrying samples from the surrounding area. "The soil analysis is complete," he announced. "This region alone contains 14 different compounds that would be lethal to Union citizens. The humans grow food in it." The small team of researchers gathered around the central display as Trell brought up his findings. Images showed humans consuming substances containing alcohol, caffeine, and various toxic compounds for pleasure. "They deliberately ingest poisons," said Lieutenant Nix, his facial tentacles curling in disgust. "And their young play in dirt full of microorganisms that would cause deadly infections in our species." Another researcher, Dr. Fern, pulled up her own recordings. "Watch this group engaging in what they call sports. They willingly collide with each other at high speeds. Their bodies absorb impacts that would rupture our internal organs. It's their cellular structure," Trell explained, showing microscopic scans. "Their bodies repair damage at rates we thought theoretical. And their immune systems, they don't just fight pathogens, they remember them." Captain Voss, who had come down to the surface for a first-hand look, shook her head in disbelief. "The Union Scientific Council still questions our reports. Director Morrow called them exaggerations and misinterpretations." "Misinterpretations," Kelt scoffed. "Yesterday I watched humans immerse themselves in freezing water for recreation. Then they sat in small rooms heated to temperatures that would cook most species alive. They called it a spa day." The captain sighed. "The Council wants more concrete evidence before they'll acknowledge we've discovered a true Deathworld species. They've never had to reconsider such a fundamental principle of xenobiology." "Maybe this will convince them," said Nix, bringing up new footage from a nearby human city. The video showed emergency vehicles with flashing lights surrounding a burning building. Humans wearing protective gear ran into the flames while others evacuated. "They're going into the fire?" Voss asked incredulously. "They call them firefighters," explained Nix. "They specialize in entering dangerous situations to save others. They train for it. They consider it honorable." The room fell silent as they watched humans emerge from the inferno carrying their injured. Even with protective equipment, the aliens knew the temperatures inside would be instantly fatal to them. Their entire society is built around overcoming dangers that would terrify any rational species, Trell said softly. "They don't just survive here. They deliberately challenge themselves against their deadly environment." Kell added another recording to the growing database. "I've been monitoring their entertainment. They create fiction about encountering aliens and exploring space." She laughed, a nervous sound. "In their stories, they're always the hardy ones, surprised to find other species so fragile." "If they only knew," murmured Captain Voss. Later that evening, as the observation team prepared their latest report for the increasingly skeptical Union Council, they watched a group of human children playing in a rainstorm, faces upturned to catch water on their tongues. "They're not afraid of anything," whispered Trell. "And that might be the most terrifying thing about them." The observation post's alarm blared, jolting Professor Trell from his sleep cycle. Red warning lights flashed throughout the small hidden facility. "What's happening?" he demanded, rushing into the control room, where Science Officer Kell frantically worked at the main console. "Catastrophic camouflage system failure," she replied, her scales paling with stress. "The energy dampeners went offline during the night storm. We're fully visible to anyone within 2 kilometers. Lieutenant Nix burst through the door, breathing heavily. "Worse than that. I was monitoring the perimeter. There's a group of humans approaching from the east. They've spotted us." Captain Voss, who had returned to the surface for the weekly inspection, slammed her fist on the emergency transmission button. "Seeker, this is ground team. We have a first contact situation developing, requesting immediate extraction." The response came through with a burst of static. "Ground team, this is Seeker. Massive electrical storm in upper atmosphere. Extraction impossible for at least 6 hours. Maintain protocols. Avoid engagement if possible. 6 hours? Nix's voice rose in pitch. The humans will be here in minutes. Trell peered at the surveillance screen, showing 5 humans cautiously making their way through the forest toward their location. They carried primitive tools, metal implements, and what appeared to be projectile weapons. We can't run, Voss decided. Our physiology isn't adapted to this gravity for sustained movement. We'd be caught immediately. She straightened her uniform. We follow first contact protocols. Non-threatening posture, slow movements, basic communication attempts. You want us to just meet them? Kell asked incredulously. Would you prefer we hide and let them examine our technology unsupervised? Voss countered. Minutes later, the 4 aliens stood nervously outside their facility, the camouflage shield now completely deactivated. The rounded structure gleamed in the morning sunlight, obviously artificial amid the natural forest. The humans emerged from the tree line, stopping about 20 meters away. They stared, mouths open, at the 4 extraterrestrials. They looked terrified, whispered Nix. So do you, Voss replied under her breath. She stepped forward slowly, raising her upper limbs in what their research suggested was a universal gesture of peace. To everyone's surprise, the lead human, a tall male with gray-streaked facial hair, mirrored the gesture. Then he smiled, revealing blunt white teeth. "Hello there," the human said. The translation device at Voss's belt processed the sounds and provided an approximate meaning. "Are you from space?" Voss nodded, the motion studied from weeks of observing human body language. "Yes, we come in peace, for research only." The human's smile widened. "Been watching us, huh?" He glanced at the facility. "For how long?" 3 planetary rotations, replied Trell, unable to contain his scientific curiosity. "Your species is remarkable." Instead of responding with fear or aggression as the aliens half expected, the humans seemed delighted. They moved closer, bombarding the aliens with questions that their translation device struggled to keep up with. "Are there many species out there? What's your planet like? How do your ships work? Can we see inside?" One younger human approached Kell with particular interest. "Your scales, they change color with your mood." Kell's scales involuntarily shifted to a purple hue of embarrassment. "Yes, it is involuntary." "That's amazing," the human exclaimed. As the initial shock wore off, both groups cautiously began sharing information. The aliens were stunned by the humans' adaptability. Within an hour, they were comfortably interacting, showing none of the fear or hostility that characterized most first contact scenarios. "You folks don't look like you'd do well here," observed the older human, introducing himself as Tom. "This place seems tough for you. Your world is classified as extremely hazardous by our standards," admitted Voss. "The gravity, temperature fluctuations, atmospheric composition." Tom laughed, a sound that still startled the aliens. "Earth? Dangerous. This is one of the milder parts of our planet. You should see the real harsh places." The aliens exchanged horrified glances. This was mild. When the extraction team finally arrived, they found something unexpected: aliens and humans sharing a meal together. The aliens carefully consuming only pre-approved nutrition packets, exchanging stories, and laying the groundwork for what would become the most unexpected diplomatic relationship in galactic history. "We didn't expect your first reaction to be friendship," confessed Trell as they prepared to leave. Tom shrugged. "We've been looking at the stars and hoping to find others out there for centuries. The real surprise is that you find us scary." "Not scary," corrected Voss. "Incredible." The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Union had never been so packed. Representatives from 217 species filled the tiered seating, their excited chatter creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and rumbles. Today marked an unprecedented event. the first official visit of a delegation from a confirmed Deathworld. "This is highly irregular," complained Ambassador Zoll, his gill flaps pulsating with agitation. "Bringing unpredictable aliens to the heart of Union space without centuries of observation first." Director Morrow nodded in agreement. Captain Voss and Professor Trell have shown questionable judgment in accelerating this process. The humans insisted. Captain Voss explained, standing before the Union Council. Once they understood the scope of galactic civilization, they wanted formal relations immediately. They're impatient by our standards. The massive doors at the end of the hall swung open. A hush fell over the assembly as 4 humans entered, escorted by Union security personnel who kept a nervous distance. Leading them was Tom, now dressed in formal attire selected by Union cultural experts to convey respect. Many aliens gasped or recoiled as the humans approached. Even with all the preparation and briefings, seeing Deathworlders in person was shocking. They moved too quickly, their limbs swinging with alarming freedom, their skin alarmingly exposed to the environment. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Union," began Tom, his voice carried by translation devices throughout the hall. "We bring greetings from Earth. We are honored to be the first humans to stand among the stars." A bold representative from the avian Crix species called out, "Is it true you can withstand radiation levels that would kill most species?" Tom looked confused. "I'm not sure what levels you mean, but we do have nuclear power, if that's what you're asking about." Professor Trell stepped forward. Perhaps a demonstration would be more effective than discussion. He gestured to a table that had been set up at the center of the chamber. "With the humans' permission, we've arranged a series of simple tests." What followed left the assembly alternately amazed and horrified. The humans casually handled objects that would burn or freeze other species' appendages. They lifted weights that would strain mechanical assistance systems on most worlds. One human named Jack cheerfully ate a piece of fruit containing acids that would dissolve the digestive tracts of half the species present. "And you consider your world mild?" asked a horrified council member. "Parts of it are challenging," Tom acknowledged. "We have deserts, Arctic regions, mountains, deep oceans, but we've adapted to them all." "They don't just adapt," interjected Science Officer Kell, who had been monitoring the humans' vital signs. "They seek out these extreme conditions deliberately, for recreation." To demonstrate, Jack displayed images from his personal device. Humans climbing frozen waterfalls, diving into oceanic trenches, racing across scorching deserts. "You do this for enjoyment?" A gelatinous council member bubbled incredulously. "It's how we push our limits," Jack explained with a shrug. "Always exploring, always testing ourselves." The council chambers erupted in debate. Some representatives argued that humans represented a dangerous new element in galactic politics, beings who could survive conditions that would serve as natural barriers to other species. Others saw tremendous potential in an alliance with creatures so uniquely adapted. "Consider the possibilities," urged Professor Trell. "Humans could conduct rescue operations in environments lethal to other Union species. They could explore worlds we've deemed uninhabitable. Their unique biology could revolutionize our medicine." As the arguments continued, Tom leaned toward Captain Voss. "They're really frightened of us, aren't they?" he whispered. "Not frightened," she corrected. "Awed. You casually withstand conditions that would kill any of us instantly. It's like watching someone breathe underwater." Tom looked around at the aliens, seeing them suddenly through new eyes, not as advanced beings, but as creatures who had evolved in gentler cradles than humanity's harsh birthplace. "We never thought of ourselves as special," he said quietly. "Just survivors." "Sometimes," replied Voss. "That's the most remarkable thing of all." The emergency alert cut through all communication channels across the Union space station. Red warning lights pulsed through the corridors where the human delegation had been staying for the past week. "What's happening?" Tom asked, rushing into the main hall where aliens scurried in obvious panic. Captain Voss approached quickly. "Mining disaster on Nirin II. One of our deep core extraction facilities suffered a catastrophic failure. Over 50 workers are trapped 2 kilometers below the surface. Can't you send in rescue teams? Asked Jack, the athletic member of the human group. Voss's scales darkened with distress. Impossible. The environment is lethal. Radiation from exposed mineral veins, temperatures exceeding 70 degrees, toxic gas pockets, and sections with 2.5 times standard gravity due to dense mineral deposits. The humans exchanged glances. Those conditions sound. Tom began carefully. Survivable, finished Jack. For us, anyway. The Union Emergency Council had gathered in the command center, alien representatives arguing loudly over screens showing the disaster site. Director Morrow was speaking when the humans entered. Automated systems have failed. We must accept that those workers are lost. The environmental conditions make rescue impossible. Not for everyone, Tom said, stepping forward. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the humans. You can't be serious, Director Morrow replied. Even if you could survive temporarily, our medical team confirms the conditions would cause severe damage to your physiology. It would be suicidal. We'll need proper equipment, Jack said, ignoring the director's protests. Breathing gear for the toxic gases, protective clothing for the heat, but the radiation and gravity. We can handle those for the necessary time. Professor Trell, who had been analyzing the disaster data, looked up. The human biological parameters suggest they could indeed survive these conditions. Temporarily. But the risk. We risk our lives to save others on Earth all the time, said Lisa, another member of the human delegation. Firefighters, emergency workers, rescue teams. It's what we do. The council erupted in debate. Some argued that risking diplomatic representatives was unthinkable. Others pointed out that no other option existed for the trapped workers, who had less than 6 hours of air remaining. This isn't a debate for us, Tom stated firmly. If we can help, we will. That's humanity for you. 3 hours later, a Union transport ship approached Naren II. Inside, the 4 humans checked their makeshift equipment. Union engineers had rapidly modified mining suits to provide oxygen and thermal protection, but the rest would depend on human endurance. The entrances to levels 3 through 7 are blocked, Captain Voss explained, showing holographic maps. You'll need to create a path through collapsed tunnels. How much time do they have left? Asked Tom. Less than 3 hours of emergency air supply. The humans nodded grimly. When they emerged from the transport at the mining facility, the local aliens stared in disbelief. No one had expected rescue, least of all from strange beings they'd never seen before. They won't last 10 minutes in there, muttered a supervisor to Captain Voss. The first test came immediately. The facility's artificial gravity stabilizers had failed, meaning the humans felt the crushing force of high gravity as soon as they stepped from the ship. They stumbled momentarily, then straightened, adjusting to weight that would have pinned most Union species to the ground. Just like training with weighted packs, Jack grunted, his voice strained but determined. As the humans disappeared into the mine entrance, Union scientists monitored their vital signs remotely, prepared for the worst. What followed became legendary across the Union. The humans forced their way through collapsed passages, lifted debris that would require mechanical assistance for other species, and endured radiation levels considered immediately lethal. Their body temperatures rose dangerously high, their muscles strained against the gravity, but they pressed on. They're still moving, whispered Science Officer Kell in disbelief, watching the life signs. How is this possible? 5 hours after entering the mine, when hope had nearly faded, the facility sensors detected movement at an emergency exit. The humans emerged, carrying and supporting injured miners. Their suits were torn, their skin burned and blistered in places, but all 53 trapped workers had been saved. As medical teams rushed to treat both the miners and the exhausted humans, Captain Voss turned to Director Morrow. Still believe Deathworlds aren't real? She asked quietly. The director watched as Jack, despite his injuries, helped carry a miner to a medical pod. "No," he admitted, "but I'm very glad they are." The Grand Council chamber had been redesigned. Where once all representatives sat at the same level, now a special reinforced section accommodated the new delegation from Earth. The gravity was set to 1.3 times Union standard. The temperature ran several degrees higher than comfortable for most species, and the oxygen mixture would be toxic to many without protective breathing apparatus. These modifications weren't meant as barriers, but as recognition. This was how humans lived naturally. Director Morrow stood at the central podium, his ceremonial robes replaced with simpler attire. The mining disaster had changed many things, including the Union's fondness for formality. "Today marks a historic classification," he announced to the assembled representatives. "By unanimous vote, the planet Earth has been officially designated as a Category 12 Deathworld, the first confirmed in our records." Murmurs spread through the chamber. For centuries, the Union had classified worlds on a scale of habitability from 1 to 10. The creation of Categories 11 and 12 had been necessary to accommodate Earth's extreme conditions. Tom and the human delegation showed no particular pride in this designation. To them, Earth was simply home, neither especially harsh nor particularly gentle. Additionally, continued Director Morrow, humans are hereby granted special status within the Union as extreme environment specialists. Their unique biological adaptations make them invaluable for operations in conditions hostile to other member species. Professor Trell stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "My colleagues and I have completed our preliminary study of human evolutionary responses to hostile environments. The results have forced us to reconsider fundamental principles of xenobiology." The display showed comparisons between human cellular structures and those of other species. The differences were striking. Human cells could repair damage at rates previously thought impossible. Their immune systems fought off microorganisms that would devastate other species, and their skeletal muscular systems withstood pressures that would crush most Union members. Most remarkably, Trell explained, humans continue to adapt within a single lifetime. What they call exercise is deliberately stressing their bodies to become stronger. They build tolerance to toxins, extreme temperatures, even radiation to some degree. "But what does this mean for the Union?" asked a representative from a low-gravity world. Captain Voss, newly promoted to admiral for her role in the First Contact, addressed the question. "It means we must rethink our approach to the galaxy. Worlds we dismissed as uninhabitable may host life with adaptations we never imagined possible. And with human assistance, we can now explore and establish presence in environments previously beyond our reach." In the months since the mining rescue, joint human-Union teams had already ventured to planets long deemed too dangerous. The results had been revolutionary: new resources, strange life forms, and scientific discoveries that challenged centuries of established knowledge. "There's something else," Tom added, rising from his seat. During his time with the aliens, he had learned to move more slowly, to speak more softly, accommodations for species that found human speed and volume alarming. "We're not unique in our adaptability. Earth hosts millions of species, each specialized for different environments. The Union has been limiting itself by seeking only worlds that match your comfort." The council hall grew quiet as the implications sank in. The galaxy was vaster and more diverse than they had allowed themselves to imagine. Later, as the formal session ended, Professor Trell approached Tom in a corridor. "There's a question I've wanted to ask," the alien scientist said hesitantly. "When your team entered that mine, your chances of survival were calculated at less than 30%. Yet you never hesitated. Why?" Tom thought for a moment. "Because that's what humanity does. We evolved not just to survive our world, but to protect each other within it. Our strength isn't just in our bodies. It's in our willingness to risk everything for others." Trell's scales shimmered with emotion. "That may be the most alien concept of all to the Union. and perhaps the most important thing we can learn from you. On a view screen nearby, footage played of a new joint expedition preparing to explore a storm-racked planet. Humans worked alongside Union species, each contributing their unique abilities to the mission. "We called your world a death world," Trell observed, "but perhaps we should have named it something else." "What would that be?" asked Tom. "A crucible," the alien replied. "A place where pressure and heat forge something extraordinary." Tom smiled. "I think we can live with that."